Okay. All right. Welcome, people online. We just did the announcements. You missed the announcements, but the announcements are, no confirmation next week, acolyte worship training on the 27th, 10th graders on the 3rd of November go straight to Mount Zion at 6 o'clock, 9th graders right here as usual. Tonight, Seasons of Love, the liturgical year. Think about how you measure a year in your life. Have you seen Rent? Do you know the musical Rent? Seasons of Love. Anyway, it's about measuring a year in your life, and that song is. But how do we measure? Most of us think about when we're 9th or 10th grade, we might think of like the beginning of the school year, and then, I don't know if there's a homecoming or any fall sports, Halloween, the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then stuff that happens in January, maybe the end of the semester. However you think about the year in your life, there's certain milestones or certain things that happen every year that you can kind of clock your experience of a school year or a year in your life. Maybe from your birthday to the next birthday. And we do that in the church too. We base it in the church on the 3 big festivals of the church year. Can you guess what they are? What's the biggest thing we celebrate at church? Christmas and Easter. And you know the third one? Well, let's think about it. Easter. We start with thinking about Easter, certainly if you think of what Christianity is about, certainly the death and resurrection of Jesus is at the center of our faith. The celebration of Easter, the celebration of resurrection, of God bringing back to life and bringing us to life as opposed to letting us suffer in pain or guilt or sadness our whole lives. Easter, resurrection, the color that we associate that is usually white. In church, when you see it, you'd say, well, that doesn't look like white, it looks like gold or kind of a festival color. But it's supposed to be a celebration of light, of day, of celebration, purity. And then Christmas also uses the same colors. Unknown to many people, red and green are not the colors of Christmas in the church. In the church, we say the color of Christmas is another holiday like Easter, white or that gold color again. And then Pentecost. Pentecost is the 3rd great festival of the church. Most people don't think of it as important as Christmas or Easter, but that's mostly because our culture has really picked up Christmas and Easter as big, big festivals. And truthfully, the season of Pentecost, or the day of Pentecost, is big in that it's the gift of Christ's Spirit into our lives and the founding of the church. And the color for that is red. Red is supposed to be a color for passion and power and the Spirit. And if you remember, the story of Pentecost was when those flames danced on the heads of the 3,000 people that were gathered in Jerusalem. So red or fire. So those are the 3 great festivals. Festivals and patterns of the church year, seasons of the church year, usually have a color associated with them, associated with the way we decorate the church, and ways you can kind of think of the way the tradition is celebrated. Those festivals focus on Jesus' life. So you see the empty tomb there of a sense of freedom, and again, the daylight of a new day, not buried, but born to new life. And then Christmas, you see this Christmas story up there, and Pentecost, that image of the Spirit being poured out. And you can see the little sense of fire or light on their heads. When we think of the church year in liturgical terms of this calendar, this season of love, the church year starts with Advent, which is usually the end of November or the is 4 Sundays, and then any days that are after that last Sunday up until Christmas. So it can be as long as 27 days, or it could be as short as 21 or 22 days. It's a little tricky when Christmas is on a Monday. Advent, the 4th Sunday of Advent is the Sunday, and then Christmas is right away. The color is blue, a season of hope or expectation or waiting. Blue is considered the color of anticipation. And Mary, the mother of Jesus, is often pictured wearing blue. That's one of the ways you know it's an Advent story. When we celebrate Advent at church, we light candles. Some of you might have candles at home that you use. We light successive weeks. So the first week of Advent, we light the first candle, then we light the next each week of Advent. That wreath is a symbol of Advent, and we're preparing for Christmas. We're preparing for the celebration of Christmas. Think of the ways you might celebrate getting ready for Christmas at home. Most of us know that big holidays, big experiences like that are fun, not just because of the day itself, we all like Christmas, but the anticipation of it, waiting, looking forward to it. Many of us are busy if we were going to make something for somebody for Christmas, or if we make certain treats that we like to celebrate Christmas with, or if we're shopping or doing something, sending out cards, getting ready for a concert, the kinds of things that we do to prepare for Christmas. It's usually a season of preparation and anticipation of preparedness. The next great season starts with Easter, or focuses on Easter, but there's the time of preparing for Easter, and that's the season of Lent. There's 5 Sundays, really 6 Sundays in Lent, but there's 6 weeks, 40 days of Lent. The last Sunday is called the Sunday of the Passion, so it's not labeled there, but purple is the color, and it's a season of sacrifice, sometimes penitence. Royalty is purple, so a sense of anticipation of both suffering and sacrifice at the same time, leading towards life, so that empty tomb. The focus of Lent is these 5 practices of prayer, fasting, giving, usually making offering, confessing of sins, and works of love, charity or caring for others. And it's interesting to me that in most of the culture knows about Advent, knows about a time at least of preparing for Christmas, whether they call it Advent or not. There's a lot that goes on in December in the culture to prepare for Christmas. There's not so much in the season of Lent that allows people to prepare for Easter. And especially if you think in terms of fasting or giving or caring for other people, those usually aren't highlighted in those months and weeks leading up to Easter. People are thinking maybe of getting the garden ready or doing things as the snow melts and they can get ready for spring. But they're not thinking in terms of these kinds of things. It's really the church, only the church, that really highlights a sense of waiting to celebrate death and resurrection. It's an odd way of talking about it. You're not celebrating death, but you're celebrating this gift of sacrifice and what it means for us. Pentecost occurs 50 days after Easter. We'll look at that in a minute. And then itself is red. It's celebrated as a red day. But every Sunday after that is green. And there are many, many Sundays in a row of the Sunday after Pentecost. The second Sunday after Pentecost, the third Sunday after Pentecost, the fourth, fifth, sixth Sunday. This coming Sunday will be the 21st Sunday after Pentecost. We just keep counting Sundays. It's the long part of the year. And those Sundays are all green. Green is always a season of growth, of learning, of reflection, of community, and of discipleship. If you look at it in terms of those big holidays, so Christmas, Easter, and Pentecost, and then there's all these seasons that lead up to them and follow them. So 4 Sundays of Advent, 12 days of Christmas. So you can say Merry Christmas to people for 12 days. I'm a big believer in this. I think the tradition pushes us through Christmas Day too quickly, and you get to celebrate for 12 days. Epiphany is the 12th day, or actually the 13th day, so January 6th. Then these Sundays after Epiphany, that looks yellow up there, but that's supposed to be green. It looks green on my computer here. Then Ash Wednesday is the first day of Lent, and Lent is these 40 days that lead up to Easter. It's weird if you count 40 days, you'll try and do the math and it won't add up. 40 was a number in scriptural time of a time of fasting or repentance. So we use that image even though it's not literally 40 days. You have to count, take out the Sundays, and then you take out the 3 days at the end, which are called the 3 holy days, also known as Triduum. Triduum just means 3 days. That's just the Latin for 3 days. Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and the day between Good Friday and Easter, sometimes known as Holy Saturday. Those 3 days are in themselves a season by themselves, kind of between Lent and Easter. And you'll hear us say this a lot, but those 3 days each have a big worship service associated with each of them, and they're some of the most beautiful worship services of the whole church year. More beautiful, I think, than Christmas and Easter. They're just really full worship services and really meaningful. And I hope, especially during your confirmation time, that you'll find a time to say, I'm going to do all those 3 days. I want to see what that's like to go through the worship services on those 3 days. Then Easter is 50 days. I always like the idea of saying Lent is 40 days. This is preparation for dying and understanding the suffering and death of Jesus. But Easter is longer. Easter triumphs over Lent. Easter is 50 days. 50 days of celebrating new life. Then Pentecost is the 50th day, and that's what the word Pentecost means, 50th. The 50th day after Easter, and then all those Sundays that I talked about, the Sundays after Pentecost. There's also one or two other feast days, you might say, that we celebrate in the midst of Pentecost, where all of a sudden things turn white again just for one day, or red or something. Those are usually kind of sprinkled in the season of Pentecost. Again, these 3 holy days, the Triduum, Maundy Thursday, the Thursday before Jesus died. You know, when we have communion, we always use the phrase, on the night in which he was betrayed, our Lord Jesus took bread. You know those words. This is the night, that night in which he was betrayed. It's Maundy Thursday. Maundy just means commandment. Jesus gave the disciples a commandment as he was dying to love one another. So there's foot washing, there's communion, there's the stripping of the altar and the preparation for Jesus' death. Good Friday is the day he died, the Passion reading that tells the story of his death, and certain prayers that are always used, and this beautiful liturgy of adoration of the cross, honoring the cross, recognizing what the cross symbolizes to us. Then that Holy Saturday worship service is the vigil of Easter. It's a really beautiful, kind of mysterious service. It's supposed to start at sunset, because in our hemisphere, usually sunset comes pretty late that time of year, late, mid-spring. It's a long service. It can last as long as 3 hours. We don't usually do the whole 3 hours at Gloria Day, especially because it would start very late and it would get out really late and then we'd come back really early on Easter morning. So we don't do the full 3 hours, but it's a really beautiful service with a fire and incense and a lot of darkness, a lot of prayers lots of dramatic storytelling, baptism, communion, and the celebration of Easter. So you're celebrating like the first glimpse of Easter while it's still dark. It's really a very beautiful service. It's really the coolest. I know you can't see any of the words up there, but this is a calendar that goes around the year. If you can look here, these are the Sundays of Advent in blue, then Christmas, those 12 days. So you can see all 12 days. These are the Sundays on the outside, and then it goes all the way down to Saturdays on the inside. Then Epiphany, the season of Epiphany, Lent, those 3 days, Easter, Pentecost, then this green season of the Sundays after Pentecost, and we're in this right now. And it goes all the way up to the last few weeks where there's sometimes special holidays right in here. One of them is All Saints' Day, when we remember everyone who has died, especially this past year, but really all the saints, those people who live in the presence of God now. And then it starts all over again. So it goes around and around, right? From this all the way around, and we start the year over again. And it's just this ritual repetition of the same year over and over again. Our Jewish brothers and sisters also follow a yearly calendar. They read the first 5 books of the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament, which they would call their Bible. The first 5 books, all the way in 1 year. They start at the beginning of Genesis, and then they read through those 5 books, and the next year they start Genesis over again, every year. So it's like the 3rd week of the year, they're always reading the same passage. For us, we do it a little bit differently. We follow a lectionary every 3 years, but every year starts with Advent. So what we do is we read each Sunday, usually assigned to us a reading from the Old Testament, then a psalm, and then a reading from what is called the letters. That's part of the New Testament, but not the gospel stories, not Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, and then a gospel story. So whereas our Jewish friends will read the whole first 5 books over and over again, we'll focus on Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then other readings that support those. But we do it this way. In the first year, we'll read mostly Matthew. The second year, mostly Mark, and the 3rd year, mostly Luke. We are in the year of Mark right now. We've got from now until beginning of, or actually the last part of November, to finish the book of Mark. And then the Gospel of John is read mostly in these white seasons, in Easter, in Christmas, and in certain other festival days, mostly. John is kind of sprinkled around, but especially in high seasons of high liturgical notice. So we go through every year, and if you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, you'll notice those stories are very similar to each other. They don't all have a story of Jesus' birth, which is kind of interesting because we make a big deal of Jesus' birth. The Gospel of Mark doesn't even have it. But both Matthew and Luke do. And so we almost always read the Luke story of Christmas. On Christmas, we'll read the story of Luke. That's the one we know about Mary and Joseph and the baby in Bethlehem. The story in Matthew of baby Jesus is really about the wise men coming, which we read on Epiphany. But we read stories that anticipate Jesus' life, that tell the disciples, the calling of disciples and how people follow Jesus, and then his death and resurrection. And then through the rest of that Pentecost season, we'll just be reading other stories from the Gospels. First 1 year Matthew's way of telling it, then Mark's way of telling it, then Luke's way of telling it, again with John sprinkled in between. So we go through that whole season 3 times following that same pattern. In your small group tonight, you're going to talk about why that pattern works, what's important about it, and just how we understand the marking of time. Why we do a marking of time, how it's important to us. 10th graders, we only have 2 leaders for 10th grade tonight, besides me, right? Angie and Samantha, is that correct? Where do you usually meet? Where does your group meet? Stay here. And you go across the hall sometimes, Angie? All right. 9th graders, where do you meet? Yep, right here. All right, you stay here, and 10th graders, take your chairs with you. We'll go across the hall. And then make sure when you finish tonight, you put your chair away. If you're coming to 10th grade, you bring it back and put it up on this